Well, good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Before we begin the program, I'd like to ask you all to silence your cell phones. A couple more people. Well, good morning and welcome to UC San Diego's School of Extended Studies and the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, where we have classes in these three classrooms twice a day, Monday to Thursday. My name is Steve Clary. I am the chair of the curriculum committee here at the Osher Institute, and I'm a member of the advisory council as well. A lot of new faces, so let me just take a minute and talk a little about the Osher Institute. It is a membership organization for adults over the age of 50 who wish to continue learning and engagement. We offer classes, lectures, seminars, study groups here in these very classrooms twice a week, 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. in the afternoon. Speakers come from UCSD faculty, from the local academia, USD, art historians, community leaders. And subjects range from art history to medicine to science to law. And it's a great program. We have almost 700 members. The Osher Institute began its summer quarter this week, and classes will continue until 27 August. Excuse me. Our former treasurer, who is an accountant in disguise, even though he's really a physicist in disguise. Again, classes began this week, and we have another 7 weeks to go. Registration for the summer is $125, and we welcome you all to attend. I see that we have gained a number of members from the World Affairs Council. One of the highlights of our summer program are the 3 Wednesday afternoon concert performances, lectures by Gustavo Romero, a local pianist, comes home every summer to visit his mother and to entertain us here at the Osher Institute and at the Athenaeum. So please join us. Registration is can be found in the brochures, which are out in the lobby or on the Osher website. olli.ucsd.edu. We also think of ourselves as a community of lifelong learning, and I'm very pleased to introduce you to Jeannie Scott, our activities chairperson, who rigorously schedules non-academic events, competing for your time, as well as the academic curriculum. No registration required for classes, just show up after you pay your fee. You can participate online or you can participate in person. So if you have questions today, you'll see people here with funny looking lanyards. They'd be delighted to answer any questions you have. We have a number of Osher members here. Always great to see you here on Saturday. So without further ado, I want to introduce Noah Abraham, who can now talk about today's program. Thanks, Noah.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. It's great to see some familiar faces here too. There you go. That's Carl. Great. He's a very handsome fellow, so I apologize for standing in front of him. On behalf of the San Diego World Affairs Council, thank you for joining us today for another program in our distinguished speaker series, and we are especially grateful to UC San Diego and the Extended Studies and the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute for hosting us in this extraordinary venue. It really is superb. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to those who are joining us for the first time. So some familiar faces, but to everyone here for the first time, thank you for coming. The San Diego World Affairs Council is a non-partisan, non-profit organization dedicated to fostering global awareness and informed civic dialogue through public programs, educational initiatives, and community engagement. Our mission is to bring people together to better understand the international issues that shape our lives both around the world and here in our own region in San Diego. And today's topic is a perfect example of that mission. The Tijuana River crisis is one of the most pressing environmental and public health challenges facing our binational region. What begins south of the border does not stop at the border. It impacts our beaches, our economy, our military, our readiness, our public health, and the daily lives of the communities on both sides of this international border. Addressing challenges of this scale requires more than engineering just solutions. It requires collaboration among governments, scientists, business leaders, educators, advocates, and engaged citizens. And that's exactly why we've assembled today's outstanding panel, to explore not only the challenges we face, but also the opportunities for meaningful cross-border cooperation. So our format this morning will begin with opening remarks from each of our panelists, followed by a moderated discussion, and then we'll have time for Q&A at the end. And we encourage you to stay engaged throughout the conversation. We'll invite participation during the Q&A, so save your questions for the end, and we'll do that at the end of the program. So before we begin, I'd like to thank our moderator and our panelists for being here today, for their expertise and perspectives, as well as our volunteers and our interns and everyone else who makes this event possible. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator, who I stood behind earlier, but here he is. Carl Nettleton is the founder and president of Open Oceans Global, an international non-profit focused on stopping the flow of plastics to the ocean. He has been involved with the Tijuana River pollution issue since the 1980s, when he produced a television show on San Diego marine pollution, narrated by Walter Cronkite, and that aired in prime time on both CBS and KPBS, and included coverage of the Tijuana River. His engagement continued when he led outreach for the city of San Diego's 1.5 billion metropolitan sewage upgrade that included the South Bay water reclamation plant, the South Bay ocean outfall, and many other projects between Del Mar and the Mexican border. Later, as the city's public and media affairs director, he was involved in efforts to address pollution issues in the Tijuana River Valley. In 2008, Carl co-founded and co-chaired the Tijuana River Valley Recovery Team, comprising 30 organizations on both sides of the border, working together to address cross-border pollution. Carl is currently implementing the technology for his organization's Oceans Plastic Pathways initiatives in Ecuador, in conjunction with government agencies, researchers, and community organizations. So please join me in welcoming our moderator, Carl Nettleton.
Thank you, Noah. Pleased to be here and pinch hit for Oscar Cortez, the moderator, who's not well, but I was happy to come in and help the San Diego World Affairs Council, which is a great organization, and I'm a member. You know, our objectives today, just to help the audience, what we're trying to do is to understand the scope and urgency of the Tijuana River crisis, hear multiple perspectives, and we have a great panel to help us with that. Explore practical long-term solutions rather than simply describing the problem, and to learn with a better understanding of how cross-border collaboration can drive meaningful progress. Our theme today throughout should be collaboration rather than blame. This issue has developed over the decades and involves multiple jurisdictions, institutions, and stakeholders. While it's important to acknowledge the challenges, today's goal is to explore how government, researchers, businesses, nonprofits, and communities can work together to move from awareness to action. And a question to keep in mind throughout this discussion for our panelists and our audience is, how do we move from awareness to action, and what does effective international cooperation look like? Today's panel reflects a diversity of perspectives. Rather than focusing solely on how we arrived at this point, I hope our discussion will begin with, our discussion will explore where we go from here and what meaningful cross-border cooperation can look like moving forward. We'll begin with brief opening remarks by each of the panelists, I will introduce them one at a time as they come up. And we're going to lead off with Kenya Zamaripa, sorry, Kenya, Vice President of International and Public Affairs for the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce. Kenya works at the intersection of regional economic development and international collaboration, helping advance policies that strengthen the economic competitiveness of the binational region. She'll be setting the stage for understanding the crisis.
Morning. Good morning. There you go. I don't know what to do. Hold on, good luck, everybody. There I am. Well, I don't know that I have to explain to everyone why this is a priority, but just wanted to like set the stage, remind ourselves what we're talking about. And this is that Mother Nature knows no borders. Tijuana and San Diego share a watershed. And that means that everything that is not captured and sent to treatment in Tijuana risks end up downstream here in our beaches in San Diego. And we're talking sewage, plastic, heavy metals, chemical pollution coming to coastal waters. This number, I just do the 1,000 plus because it's hard to keep track with how many beach closures and advisories we've had in the U.S. since 2015. And it's up to 50 million gallons of treated and untreated sewage every single day. And I know it's hard sometimes also to think about what kind of infrastructure we're talking about. So this is a map that everything that we often refer to. It's just trying to understand what the river is, where it ends, where the border is at. You can see some of the international water collectors, the pumping stations. You see the international treatment plant right there in San Isidro, and another one down in Tijuana, and San Antonio los Buenos. And so all of this is really part of this complex web of infrastructure, and it's not even really comprehensive. Like there's much more happening in there, but at least over the years, and I like saying this sometimes. Like I joined the chamber about 9 years ago, and this was one of the topics that just landed on my lap, and I had to learn from people like Serge and like what was going on binationally, etc. And since then, I didn't think that the San Antonio los Buenos treatment plant was going to get done. Sorry, there you go. And like when there was a political will, it happened magically. Yes. Yes, sorry. I am used to giving public testimony at City Council, so I have to speak within a minute. Infrastructure solutions have been identified on both sides of the border. That gives me like hope. But 9 years ago, I didn't think that the Tijuana River Valley was a priority for the whole region. We have to constantly be educating stakeholders, elected officials, especially down in Mexico, to understand this is a priority. And now that we have the plan, then some infrastructure has been at least committed by both countries on what is the list of projects that we should be tackling together. That gives me hope. And thinking about that, and thinking about the fact that we here as the community members are the only constant. Elected officials come and go every 3, 4, 6 years. It's hard to educate them once and for all, like every single time there's a political cycle. So we partner with the Previs Foundation to bring a report in outlining a framework that I'm going to briefly cover. Happy to share this framework with everyone after that. But it basically actually starts here. It provides a glossary for you all to know what is CEST, what is EPA, who is the counterpart of what agency, a comprehensive list of projects, like where, this is back in March, right? But where are they now? Are the projects pending? Is it in progress? How many of those 18 projects outlined by Minute 328 have been implemented, and so on, so that there's a way to keep track of those. And so the first pillar, though, focuses precisely that on completing all the 328 projects, a rate study to determine adequate revenues for the Public Utilities Commission in Tijuana. So are they charging enough? Are they covering operation and maintenance? And ensuring that Mexico's Gran Visión 2020, which is a planning document, is updated so that there's an accurate assessment of the pipeline, the pump stations, collection deficiencies, and what we should be maintaining properly. So again, Pillar 1, reliable infrastructure funding and rehabilitation of critical assets. And then on the second one, we're talking about modernized operations and maintenance. And you're going to hear that a lot. We have a series of projects. Some of them already existed, but somehow we were not properly maintaining them, so they crashed. And why are we waiting for them, these infrastructure investments to crash before paying attention to them? So looking at securing predictable operation and maintenance appropriations, reinstating that pre-treatment coordination between the different agencies, IBWC, CESP, and the City of San Diego, and proper use of technologies. Again, I'm gonna go through these so that we can talk in depth later. And then creating a binational technical committee to run border inspections, identify spills, and coordinate responses. Looking at that binational means and support inspections and what's happening. And a tiered rate structure for the international treatment plant. Again, that's the whole point of the glossary, knowing the ITP is the international treatment plant, and preventing transboundary flows. So as we're talking about, these pillars, is like getting the infrastructure done, like making sure that we have sustainable operation and maintenance funding, like governance accountability, and really is about recovering public trust in what our government institutions are saying to us that they're committed to. So looking at binational technical working group, but including an oversight committee. So that is, our opportunity as community stakeholders, but as academic institutions, yourselves, residents, the business sector, et cetera, so that we can unblock those style projects, mobilizing political support. The agencies cannot advocate for themselves in terms of like, I need this money for Congress, but we can do it for them. And resolving those funding obstacles. So in addition of that, though, what we were proposing is having more of these like State of the River annual forums so that people like you and all of us have direct contact with the agencies. The chamber also leads a delegation trip to Mexico City every year, talking to like SILA and IBWC, CONAGUA, and others, precisely to have that interaction with our elected officials and reiterating that this is a top priority for both countries. And so what we want to make sure with this pillar, though, is that we go back to transboundary flows during dry weather season before 2017. So like this is like kind of like help visualize how back in the day we had an issue and we thought that was a huge issue, and now we're having a very exorbitant amount of transboundary flows, even when there's a sunny day like today. So how can we go back to pre-2017? We know we can do it because we were there, we were already complaining. So how can we then prioritize the series of infrastructure, the funding, the initiatives that at least get us back there? And then we'll talk about what's next. And really what's next from our point of view is that long-term water management, reuse, and planning. So pushing for a water management master plan that we can update every 5 years, understanding what was going on and where we need to pivot. Studying additional projects such as the diversion or treatment project options compared against Mexico side solutions. And so again, we have a list of 18 projects. I'm sure a lot of us have heard about different additional projects. Let's just come together as a region on this next few projects that we need to prioritize, because if we all are advocating for different projects, that's when the federal government just has an excuse to stop listening. And ensuring that ocean desalination projects in Mexico also don't increase that wastewater discharges on the river coast. Again, we're talking large-scale wastewater reuse projects for Tijuana. So like now that we're treating the water, what are we doing with that? Because currently it's just being dumped back in the river and then contributing to that, the transboundary flows during dry weather season. And then finally, just kind of like a recent efforts and updates. This is my way to encourage you all to build in this momentum. I'm optimistic because back 9 years ago, we didn't think about this as a top priority for the region. I think everyone agrees that this is a priority now. So instead of thinking of who's going to be leading and who plays a bigger role, just like let's all lead together and find the same solutions. And then an opportunity there that I'll just close with, because I know we can talk about it later, is just how USMCA negotiations can be leveraged to secure funding. And the key takeaway from our trip back in April, we went to DC again, 100 elected officials, business leaders. I took with me presidents of Tijuana industry associations, and the thing that they told me when they come back was, I cannot believe that the TGRV came up in every single discussion. We talked with the Department of Commerce. We went armed to talk about USMCA, and they brought back the topic of TGRV and, like basically saying, what are you doing regionally? What is your government doing? And I know becomes political, but at least to know that it's that high up now. Like the federal government is having these conversations. Instead of fighting with ourselves on what to do, let's just leverage that opportunity to insert some language there in the USMCA so like we can fund funding for operation and maintenance in the next project. So I'll close it there.
We have all the speakers to stay within 10 minutes, and you were right on the mark, Denise. So thank you very much. We appreciate that. Okay, Serge, the challenge is you. So Serge Dedina is our next speaker. He's been a long-term executive director of Wild Coast, and as some may remember, the mayor emeritus of Imperial Beach. For decades, Serge has been one of the region's leading environmental advocates, helping bring national attention to the public health and ecological impacts of cross-border pollution. He's going to talk about the human and environmental reality of this crisis. And as a leader, I saw that he was not wearing a jacket. So as warm as in his room, I took his lead and took mine off. And I want to invite anybody else to do the same. Serge Dedina.
Great. Is this on? Can you guys hear me? No? On now. Okay, good. So yeah, first I want to thank everybody for the invite, but also my distinguished panelists. It's a team effort. You always need lots of people involved because it gets really exhausting. So what I wanted to do is just kind of walk you through just really more about the reality of the ecological systems that exist on the border. Who here has been down to Borderfield State Park? Awesome, because it's one of the most beautiful places in Southern California. It's amazing, that view from the border fence looking north to Coronado is in Point Loma is amazing, right? Dune systems. You don't have that anywhere else in San Diego. But a little bit about Wild Coast. I didn't start Wild Coast back 26 years ago with Wallace J. Nichols to stop sewage from going to the ocean. We started Wild Coast to preserve the most intact, large-scale coastal landscapes in North America. So our mission is to conserve coastal and marine ecosystems and address climate change through natural solutions. So we're working on, we own 40 miles of coastline in Baja California. We work with the Mexican government to protect 13 million acres of coastal and desert wildlands in Baja California. We're working on with indigenous communities to save coastal jaguar habitat in southern Oaxaca, right? So, and here in San Diego to help manage our marine protected areas, of which La Jolla Cove is one of the most amazing urban protected areas, marine protected areas in the world. It's insane. We can go out right now and swim with sharks. Maybe you have done that. So anyway, but I grew up cutting my teeth. I've been in Imperial Beach up until a few years ago. I lived in Imperial Beach. I moved there in 1971 when I was 7. So I cut my teeth as a conservationist, helping people like Pat and Mike McCoy, who I grew up with in Imperial Beach, old school conservationist legends here in San Diego, along with Jim Pugh, protecting and turning the Tijuana Estuary into a national wildlife refuge, and a national estuarine research reserve, and a California state park, right? And the Tijuana Estuary is arguably the most important. It used to be the most important. It is the largest contiguous sort of unbisected coastal wetland in San Diego County, if not Southern California. So it's really, really important. 90% of it, the tidal prism, has been filled in with sediment, with the dirt that's washing across the border from unplanned development on the Tijuana side. I was just in Playas at Tijuana on Thursday. All this new development on the hillsides of Playas has just basically been, causing the excavation of this very erosive sort of sand, just like we have here on the coastline, right? But the Tijuana Estuary is also a California state marine protected area, right, off its coast. I grew up surfing the reef off the Tijuana Estuary. It's a very interesting submerged reef. But the Tijuana Estuary is also and the river valley is also a county park. Okay, so combined with that and the Coronado Islands, anybody hear about the Coronado Islands? It's part of a Mexican chain of a large protected area called the Islands of the Pacific Biosphere Reserve that extends from the border all the way down to southern Baja California and includes all the islands of the Pacific. There are elephant seals out on the Coronado Islands, right? Amazing endemic plants on the island, right? So it's really important, in addition to the fact that the coastline off of Imperial Beach and San Diego, but literally because of the way the geography is, this is one of the most important migratory ocean corridors in the world, the Blue Superhighway, right? So any given day, you might have orcas going after Pacific white-sided dolphins just off of Playas to Tijuana. Amazing, right? You go offshore, humpback whales, blue whales. The water's going to warm up. We may have whale sharks swim up to San Diego, and blue sharks, fishermen are already catching the water's warming up pretty quickly. We're talking about super El Nino, right? So, but blue whales, humpbacks, gray whales, loggerhead sea turtles are swimming south. So this isn't just, that's what we tend to miss in this whole discussion is that, and I helped switch the frame to public health. Before we were talking about endangered least terns, snowy plovers, et cetera, and people are like, so what? And so it was like, hey, well, also Navy SEALs are getting sick. Our Border Patrol agents getting devastated by this. Really important discussion to have, right? And also, hey, by the way, our kids are getting sick. I've had two sinus surgeries, had an ear surgery. My kids have been to urgent care. And then there's been a much more concerted investment in understanding the public health implications from Kim Prather here at UC San Diego and researchers at San Diego State University with a whole consortium of researchers looking at the epidemiological sort of nature of this crisis and also looking at the air quality impacts. Kim Prather had an air monitor at the Imperial Beach Lifeguard Station, which was my office, by the way. When I was there, I had an office on the second floor of the lifeguard station. I just put a chair on the outside and so I met people. Why not, right? It's IV. Yeah, but there's sewage in the air. And we had, Wild Coast had an office on the other side, right across the street. And we all got so sick from just being in the office that we closed the office and we have an office in Del Mar. So the place I could walk, 50 yards to go surfing, now I have to walk 3 minutes, but it's a little further. But it's not IV where I grew up, right? And then, I think the other issue that I think is really, really important. So 12 miles at some point during a south swell was going to change, and we've had this for the last few months and we've had for the last few years. Every inch of the beach from the border field to Coronado, North Beach and Coronado, where they filmed Top Gun, right, is closed. 12 miles. It's been closed. IB's been closed for 4 years, right? Imagine if every beach from OB to Torrey Pines was closed for 4 years. Imagine if every beach from Torrey Pines to Carlsbad was closed for 4 years. Imagine if every beach from Redondo Beach to North Will Rogers State Beach in Santa Monica was closed. That's 12 miles. All right, that's what we've lost. And I think the issue is my oldest son, Israel, born about 10, 15 years ago, surfing Border Field. I was at Playas on Thursday. Surf was pumping, firing, super good. It's empty. July 4th in IB, it was empty. At fireworks, no one's going to the beach. No one's going into the water. But also the issue is, what happens to a beach community when you can't use the beach? IB isn't Carlsbad, it's not La Jolla, it's not Coronado, it's not Encinitas. I was mayor, I brought $150 million of investment, 2 hotels, restaurants, more investment than any other period in the city's history, right? I didn't get elected to deal with sewage. I got elected to pave our alleys, to put crosswalks on streets. We didn't have crosswalks on Palm Avenue, right? We just painted them. I didn't get permits to do it. To make sure that we had a grocery store. We didn't have a grocery store. A decent library, right? We got a Starbucks so people could go in and have coffee and have internet. People didn't have that. 30% of my kids in certain neighborhoods lived in poverty, right? That's what I got elected for, not to deal with sewage. So within me and then Paloma, who's now our county supervisor, imagine we're elected to address this working class, middle class community to make sure it has all the things that every other beach city has. We just want to be like Encinitas or Carlsbad or Coronado, but we spent all our time fighting, 99% of our time, fighting an international sewage issue, which means that we weren't advocating for the kid on with a skateboard to make sure they had a Parks and Rec department. When I got elected, we didn't have a Parks and Rec department. We didn't have a swimming pool, all right? So all those things make a difference. So what's the impact of all these children in our junior lifeguard program? Signature event IB, they can't go in the water. The kids that can't surf at YMCA can't go in the water. All right, so I think I want you guys to think about that, because if you think about our lives and the way we live in San Diego and Southern California, the best moments of our lives have been at the beach. I'll start crying when I think about it. I will. I just cry all the time. But, and Mary Salas, the mayor of Chula Vista, told me that her dad asked her mom to get married on the Imperial Beach Pier, right? When my mom had cancer, we'd go walk on the Imperial Beach Pier, right? I'm going to cry. Sorry, got very emotional thinking about what we've lost, but more importantly, what everybody talks about all the time. They're not talking about the baseball game or whatever. All you go to the grocery store and I be at the grocery outlet, and all people go is, why is this still happening? Why is this still happening? So I want to just end here, and I want to say something. The U.S. team, great team, World Cup, not good enough. Right? Not good enough. Belgium, great team, not good enough. Padres are an amazing team. Right now, it's not good enough. And that's the message we've been saying, and that people get really mad at. It's great, all these efforts are happening. It's not good enough. It's not enough. We're not moving quickly enough. And we decided that these kids aren't worthy enough to merit the best of the best. Because so far, and I was shocked to hear Kenya say it's not a priority. We thought it was a priority, and then people pretend they're surprised that it's a problem, right? So anyway, but I think we are moving forward. It's not quickly enough. It's not enough. But more importantly, the accountability, the infrastructure, and making sure there's monitoring to make sure people do what they say they do is the most critical thing, because these kids matter more than anything. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that compelling and emotional presentation. You've worked hard over the years, many years, and we appreciate that. Thank you. I'd next like to bring up Hernando Duran Cabrera. He's a representative of Tijuana Innovadora. In the dim and distant past, he was also the head of the Tijuana Sewage Agency for the state of Baja California. Director, excuse me, yes. Hernando has extensive experience working on infrastructure, urban development, and regional cooperation throughout Baja California, providing valuable insight into the opportunities and challenges of cross-border collaboration. And he's going to talk, as you can imagine, about infrastructure and binational cooperation. Hernando, welcome.
Yeah. I don't know if this, where is the, that's nice. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Kenny, and all the organ. Can you hear me? Okay. Today, I'm going to present the work that we have been doing over the last years through Iniciativa Río Tijuana, Tijuana River Initiative, in association with Tijuana Verde of Tijuana Innovadora. Everybody's talking about the Tijuana River, like big forums like this. It's everybody talks, everybody has some ideas, but no one has the solution. It's a very complex problem, I said. We have to keep it simple, okay? In 2021, we gathered like 50 organizations to sign a manifesto in order to save the Tijuana River. They were 25 from Tijuana and 25 from San Diego 4 years ago. And we continued to be working on that, but the problem is there. The problem is there. What last year in the Green Agora Forum that Tijuana Verde organizes, we began to discuss the Tijuana River problem and how the community can participate in addressing such a large, complex, and binational issue. How you and everybody can help in order to what we can do in order to participate in this big problem. That meeting marked the beginning of a more structured effort to study the problem and propose concrete actions that the community can take. We ask ourselves, what can we actually do? It's very difficult for the community to directly solve the problem because the infrastructure that is needed requires a lot of investment, daily operation, maintenance. Governments have the authority, the responsibility, and the resource to do that. But there is something the community can do. We can demand transparency and accountability. Governments come, as Kenya said, and governments go. But we, the community, we are going to be here for a lot of time. There is not always continuity or proper management of transboundary water infrastructure and water quality. That is why transparency and public oversight is essential. Let me explain how the Tijuana sanitation system works in very few moments. The black lines in this image represent the sewer pipes and collectors that receive wastewater from home, business, and industry. This is a pipe system, a closed system. The red area shows the watershed, urban Tijuana River watershed, which drains by gravity to the lowest part of Tijuana. The lowest part of Tijuana is the pumping station one that is in the upper part of the image, or PS1. Almost all the wastewater collected in Tijuana drains toward this point. Okay, PS1. From there, approximately half of the water goes to the international treatment plant in the United States, while the rest is pumped through PS1, pump station 1, to Punta Bandera. All in pipe closed system. Another important part are the other colored sub-basins, that is the Laureles Canyon and the Matadero Canyon. They are especially important because they drain directly into the United States and into the Tijuana River estuary, not to the channel of the Tijuana River, drains directly to the Tijuana River estuary. And I said, these are strategic facilities. The pumping station 1, the international water treatment plant, the pumping station Matadero, pumping station Laureles, they are strategic. All of them are managed by the state government through CESP. The 4 in Mexico. The one in the United States is operated by IBWC. And there are 27 sub-basins that flows through canyons and laderas and all the topography of Tijuana that drain directly into the Tijuana River channel and reach the gates in the Tijuana River channel. It is important to note that there are also 3 important inflows, one from Tecate, the red arrows, and 2 from Arturo Herrera and La Morita. There are treatment plants, but it's all the system that flows through the Tijuana River. There are not other parts that flow, and there are 4 pathways. There are only 4 pathways through which water reaches the United States through Laureles Canyon, Matadero Canyon, the pumping station point, and the Tijuana River channel. There's no other. We have to focus. We have to focus in that part. And I want to explain another key facility, the pump station Sila. This is a defensive system, like a goalkeeper. Under the binational agreements, the United States agreed to build the international treatment plant in the United States, while Mexico agreed that no water has to be passed to the United States in dry weather, when it's not raining. PV Sila has a capacity of 1,500 liters per second, about 34 million gallons a day. But if the flow exceeds that amount, that overflows that amount, the excess water flows directly to the United States. I took this picture in February, and at that time the channel was carrying 2,000 liters per second. The result was that 1,500 liters per second was pumped to Punta Bandera, and the other 500 liters per second, or about 12 million gallons a day, flow directly to the United States. And eventually that event closes the Imperial beaches and polluted the Tijuana River estuary. So we conclude that we need to focus in these strategic facilities. As I said, the pumping station 1, the Laureles pumping station, the Matadero pumping station, the pumping station PV Sila, and in the United States, they have some emergency pumping station that we have to oversee also, because they serve as a goalkeepers in the United States in the Matadero and Smugglers Canyon. That is why I believe that the local community, we must oversee these 7 facilities. If these facilities are operated correctly, there are no problems, because there are the only parts that is going to flow water to the United States. To do that, we need a group of people committed to help We need to collect performance indicators from these strategic facilities, maintain an open dialogue with the government agency that can provide information and generate our own monitoring where possible. For that purpose, in association with the San Diego organizations Four Walls International and the technical company ARU, we developed the Tijuana River Index, a platform specifically designed to collect and organize data about the Tijuana River, because there is no information. There's like 25 public agencies that have information from the river, from both sides of the border, but everybody has in every part. It's very difficult to gather that information about the Tijuana River. For this purpose, we propose the creation of a binational local working group formed by people from both sides of the border. Several organizations are working in the process of establishing this group. There are a lot of other groups, binational groups, but they are government. The government has the authority on that group. By example, the 320, the Minute 320, has a binational group, but the government says when it's going to meet. And right now, it's 1 year and a half, 18 months since the last meeting, because the government says, oh, it's not the situation, the political situation is not the best in order to meet. We have to have a governance. We can invite the governments, but the community has to be more than the government, okay? And the working group has to have an information analysis, but what is the purpose of this? We have 7 strategic facilities, okay? We have to evaluate the performance of these strategic facilities, but very easy to be understood by every people, like green, yellow, and red. If red, it's not a good performance. Yellow, green, okay, it's a good performance. And black is that it's not working at all. Something's PVC is shut down because they have some problems, power, some leakage of some sewers, I don't know. But we have to have this accountability in a very easy way. And we have a roadmap to begin informate people like you that are interested in being part of this binational working group. And in August, we're going to have a signature of every agency that wants to approve that this effort, and who can participate in the binational local working group. In September, we propose to present this agenda to the governments of both sides of both countries, and in October, November, we want to have the first cross-border agenda meeting. Okay, that's what I am proposing to participate in this cross-border agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Hernando. You see the passion that Hernando presents, and I really admire that. Here's a gentleman that was at one point in charge of that infrastructure that we're trying to fix, trying to do his best to do it in that position. And he left that, and he's transitioned that to being a citizen advocate and a person who's dedicating his life to try to solve this problem. So Hernando, thank you for that. Our next speaker is Sarah Fetterman. Sarah is the Associate Professor of the Kroc School of Peace Studies at the University of San Diego. Her work brings together research, peace building, civic engagement, and community partnership to help translate knowledge into practical action. So as you might guess, she's going to talk to us about science, civic action, and the path forward. So.
I hope that my newness to this issue and lack of expertise encourages you, because there's so much knowledge, I think, that you just see between these people and the decades that they have given to this work. And I wanted to share a little bit how we as non-experts can get involved, because you're all here. And Kenya pointed out that it's going to take political will to get something done, but political will starts with public will, and you're the public. We're the public. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a class that we had. It was a Tijuana watershed social action class. Some of our presentation is a little bit punchy, just because in addition to knowledge and commitment and brilliance, you also need a little humor and a little creativity to get these things done. So you're going to see that. It doesn't mean we're not taking it seriously, but you'll see why I'm wearing a t-shirt. But in addition to these classes, my area of study is corporate accountability for mass atrocity. So what is the role of businesses? Because they're part of every mass atrocity that goes on. They're also part of the good things that go on. So just really keeping them in that conversation. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the class. This was our class this past semester. There are 2 students who are in the class with us today, and you can approach them after. I want to talk a little bit. I just got interested in it because I swim in the cove every other day. So I'm in that water, I'm thinking about it, I feel connected to it. And then it developed a passion in me thinking of all these fish that are like breathing. Like, you don't know what you're inhaling. So we didn't know anything. So thanks to Serge and Emily Young and others, they opened doors for us. So we got to get into the Tijuana estuary. We brought in a lot of experts into class. And we're learning. And as we're learning, like you might be feeling today, it's a little overwhelming. Wait, there's a pump station here. It fixed it, and it doesn't fix it. It's fixed, and why is it still broken? But there's a lot of like, how much sewage is it? And how do you clean it? And I just want to say, like, I hope we just kept going, being like, we don't know, we just want to breathe clean air, right? And so I hope people can feel encouraged to participate, because there are people with the knowledge that we can draw on. One of the studies that we found hasn't gotten mentioned much in the events that we went to. So I want to draw some attention to it. There was a passive sampler, it's like this little, it's like the size of your hand. And some scientists stuck it along the estuary, see a big group of scientists, to figure out some of these actual industrial chemicals that have been in here. We talk a lot about the sewage, which is super important, but there's a lot of industry. There's a lot of chemicals in the water. And Goran Bazanovic on the bottom, he would have been here today, but he's doing some work in Croatia right now. But he runs the Vaz Institute, which is part of UCSD, in La Jolla. And we met with him and got to understand how his sampler works. So there's the sampler in the background. There's Elise, one of our students who's here today. We went to go see how it works. And what Elise did as a student who knew nothing about this, right? Elise, I don't know how much you knew. Did you know a little bit? Nothing. All right, so nothing. How many months ago? 4 or 5? Okay, 5 months ago. She's like, oh, this is an amazing study. Let's write out all the chemicals that they found with this sampler. Say, what family it's in. Say what the known health effects are and what its status is in the EPA, whether or not it's been banned or not. So she just made this list. If anybody wants it, we're happy to share it. And it has gone all the way to the EPA and the State Department and all over, because what she did is she helped make some of this legible. And you can see on the bottom, I wanted you to take a look. We made a tab for companies, waste management, right? So what are some of the things who are behind it? Because we're trying to go upstream. Again, knowing not very much, but working with people who do. Then Maria, who's also here today, we had students go make public statements to the Board of Supervisors, because there was they want to form a board that was going to help hold corporations accountable. Maria learned, we talked about how do you make public statements? How do you respond when you get emails about things that are important? Make your public comment here. Well, in class, we talked about how you write a powerful letter. So Maria did it. After she made her statement, she also wrote an email to State Senator Alex Padilla's office, and then she got an invitation to help try to redraft legislation. Right? How much did you know about it before? Not, I sent an email, right? Just a well-structured email. So we're teaching the social action. And then we started to get a little creative. So we made these t-shirts, and I have one on today. And it says, Croc School Social Action presents Pollution Tour, coming to a beach near you. featuring the heavy hitters, lead for brain damage, DDT for hormone disruption, PCB 126. Read that, trying to make more. But we wanted to wear them around and educate people that, like, to Serge's point, what's the 12 miles? How far does this flow? And that it be coming near you. We want other people to feel that they literally have skin in the game. And if that wasn't powerful enough, we went for the baby angle. So the students had this idea to take some onesies, paint the chemicals on them, and what they do to you. I think the one that polluted from the start, I think that's what got me. Toxic Tide baby, right? Like, Serge really like moved us by talking about like these kids matter, and these are our most vulnerable. So we went to Earth Day, we set up a tent, and educated people, knowing not much about it, but knowing like these are the chemicals and what can we do. And it was great. We met scientists there, we met active citizens, but then the question was, now what? I did take this picture this past week. I just thought it was awesome. The sea lion is sitting on top of the do not approach sign, like as if they knew they laid there and wouldn't approach. All right. So now what, right? We really want to help engage people. We are a school of peace studies, which means we have big dreams and we figure out the how along the way. We don't know, right? The Boz Institute, who I mentioned, they have more data coming in August. So we want to let you know. They've been studying the effect of these industrial chemicals on fish embryos. Hearts of fish the ventricles are not developing. Sea urchins are dying, right? All the sea urchins. I'm like, I saw their sea urchins. I wanted to free them from his lab because he's killing them. But they're studying the impact of these chemicals. They are going to then study organoids, livers, brains, and what it does to our organs as well. Then ideally, then the next thing they want to do is put these meters, passive meters, all along the border. By the way, I want to be clear, it's U.S. and Mexican companies and other companies abroad. It's not just Mexican companies. He also says it's farms on the U.S. side dumping pesticides. So this is like really international, and it's all the companies that we may be using parts of, right? So we got really interested in where it's coming from, looking at the maquiladoras, and Elise and I went and did Google Maps, and we're trying to figure out who is that, which company is that, right? Just trying to explore, because you can do a lot of open source investigation. A lot of war crimes are figured out by kids who just know how to use open source investigation, right? You can figure things out. There's a lot more data. So how do we influence the companies down there that I might be wearing some of them, I don't even know. And the farms, how do we get the farms engaged? So that's the question of accountability. And I know Kenya and our office are doing some really great work around trying to call in companies, those who are doing waste management well. How can we encourage others to do it well? And how to avoid dumping. Those are the sea lions. If you go down in La Jolla Cove, they're all lined up. Sometimes they sleep there in the evening. My swim buddy isn't here, but she often takes these pictures. So we want to apply with the partner with the business community and put some pressure upstream. It's not just about cleaning everything that comes out, but stopping it from going in the first place. Communicating with the farms. I would love to see maquiladoras report who their waste management provider is. Are these legit companies? Are they mom and pop shops? And who do they answer to? I mean, as you get closer to a problem this big, there's usually some sort of unsundry, scary characters involved. And we know that they're there, but we need everybody to help us face them. And then there's great Mexican dumping laws that we've learned from some law faculty, so how to enforce those. But we're focused sort of on the business side. But I just want to say, don't be shy. Reach out to us. Anybody wearing a t-shirt like this today. And I just put my name. If you just do sarahfederman.com, there's a contact button that just goes to me, which seems the easiest. But look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Sarah. And let's have a big hand for our panelists for not only great presentations. Only I've ever had a panel that all four panelists have stayed pretty close to their 10 minutes. So great job, you guys. And that gives us lots of time for a discussion. We're going to go to all the way to 11:30 with a panel, and then we're going to open it up to at about 11:30 or so to audience questions. And so, one of the strengths of our panel is that they each approach this problem from a different perspective. And I'd like to explore where those perspectives intersect, and more importantly, where they point us towards solutions. So I'm going to ask everyone to start off. We'll start with Serge and just go down the row. When you think about the Tijuana River crisis today, what concerns you most, and what gives you the greatest sense of urgency?
So yeah, one thing I didn't say about the big picture of the problem, and thank you, Sarah, for highlighting one of the other elements, the toxic chemicals that are in, obviously, issue of illegal dumping, toxic chemicals, sort of lack of oversight on that. And I think one of the issues on NAFTA is that ultimately labor laws are being, sort of, there's an oversight of labor conditions, but not environmental management, right? So that's something we're asking for the new negotiations. But so it's sewage, treated, unsewage, untreated, and untreated. By the way, our latest intel says that the Punta Banderas Sanitary plant, which dumps sewage in the beach 4.5 miles south of the border, isn't working. 0. So, I'm sorry. Yeah, the new one, not working. That's our an engineer who's listening to the plan. So it's going maybe up to 40 million gallons a day. It's going right into it. Even being treated, it was only being treated up to 18 million gallons, or it's 40 million gallons a day being discharged in the ocean. So on the south swell and south wind, which we get most of the time from March through, let's say, November, and even during big winter storms, the wind will turn from the south to north when the storm's going to hit. You get this current that transports that all the way to Coronado. So that's one of the reasons why the summer is polluted all the time. So that's obviously that's an issue. Waste tires, California exports over 2 million waste tires to Mexico every year. When you buy a tire, you pay a tire recycling fee, and then they take your tire. A tire hauler takes it on a truck to Mexico, where it's used for 6 months and then trucked into a canyon. When it rains, up to, we think, thousands of tires every time it rains wash back across the border. The Tijuana River Valley has a huge stockpile of tires that are buried in soil. California State Parks, the most expensive item for maintenance for all of California, is taking tires out of Borderfield State Park. So Chris Kerrigan, the park director, is a good friend of mine. That's the biggest expense he has is managing a trash broom in Borderfield State Park to capture those tires, and then they have to figure out what they do with them. So that's another issue. Wild Coast is working on that and trying to figure out how to collect tires in Tijuana. And then to the issue of trash. There really isn't good trash collection in Tijuana. You get these canyons, Los Laureles Canyon that feeds into Borderfield State Park, it's just kind of like east of Borderfield State Park. You get all kinds of trash and waste tires washing down. So we had a grant from Mark Benioff at Salesforce through UC Santa Barbara, Benioff Ocean Institute, to build a trash boom or a trash retention device in Los Laureles, and then have a recycling program to sort of collect trash, recycle it in Tijuana. Guess what? There's no recycling. Waste tires or trash in Tijuana. So we're trying to figure out how to address that. So those are all the issues. It's a comprehensive issue, right? I think the issue of toxic waste is really critical, though. And the Border Patrol actually did some research. And one of the most devastating public sort of comments, I guess, presentations I've ever seen with Border Patrol agents. I think it was before the pandemic, giving a talk to the Regional Water Board on the research they've done on the chemicals they're finding in the Tijuana River Valley. And a lot of them have been banned in the U.S. So that itself is a big issue. I think the issue of accountability and making sure that people are doing their jobs and that the system is working. It should be up to Hernando to actually, and the citizen group, to make sure that the plant's working. And something that gets people very uncomfortable is, in the U.S., it's $1.50 a gallon. The reason all our cities, wherever you live, have upgraded their sewer systems is because the Regional Water Board charges $1.50 a gallon if you dump sewage in the ocean or in a creek. That's why Coronado and the city of San Diego and all these cities were forced to, and they had to, right, upgrade their sewer systems because of this problem of all these sewage discharges. So there's a big significant decrease in sewage discharges. But if Mexico discharges 100 million gallons a day of sewage in the Tijuana River, nothing. There's no incentive to get them to stop. And to give credit, Sally Jewell Harris from IPWC, the Trump administration has been much better at getting the Mexican government to respond and fix these problems. There's always a breakdown. It usually happens on Friday, and then they decide to start fixing it on Monday. It takes 2 or 3 weeks. Just add that together, and it's always polluted. So those are just.
So I'm going to summarize and say toxicity, labor laws, and accountability. How's that? Does that work? And there's a piece, there's an undercurrent to that. You've heard some of it through this all, the whole, it's really about data. Some of the stuff Sarah talked about, Hernando talked about it. We don't know when we were, the San Antonio de las Buenas plant did not work for 15 years and nobody knew it. That's the plant that is now not working.
They said it wasn't.
It wasn't publicly acknowledged in the correct way that it wasn't working. So for 15 years, it just carried on. And now what we're hearing is that it's been rebuilt and it's new and it's not working again. So data counts. Kenya, the chamber has really been a breath of fresh air in jumping into this issue. When I was working on these things a long time ago, the chamber wasn't part of it. So how you've emphasized the chamber's emphasized environmental health and economic vitality are deeply connected. How has this crisis affected business, regional competitiveness, and why should business leaders care?
So I think and for me, it started on understanding that environmental infrastructure is economic infrastructure, and we should have everything in order as we attract and retain business investment. Kudos to the county. The county is actually conducting this survey, not just to visitors, residents, and the tourism industry, but really for businesses and organizations like the chamber on coming in on what they perceive and the actual economic impact is. And that will give us the tools to have a little bit more of the actual numbers of how this translates into an economic impact. But also thinking anecdotally, over the years, I've had at least 2 situations in which there's an international delegation coming to consider San Diego for investment. And then we talk about South Bay. And then the first thing they say about it is that they Googled it and then the Tijuana River came up. And so how is that safe for their potential workforce? And then they just look at elsewhere. So it's not just about the impact to the restaurants, the hotels, it's the impact to the opportunity cost of investing in South Bay, not just locally, but again from international delegations that allegedly didn't know anything, but then they Google it and find out. It's about the number of families that have to now take their kids to a different childcare facility because they don't want it to be in South Bay all day, and then how that impacts the traffic. Like it's much more than just what we think about immediately, and then it's just about like how like the quality of life impacts also our productivity, our competitiveness. Now that it has been elevated to potentially be part of the USMCA conversations, I'm all to say to include language to secure funding and solutions and accountability for Mexico. And at the same time, there's also another movement that says no to trade and no to the supply chains. And then that to us, that actually plays a role. That is a conversation that I try to use in my engagement with Tijuana industries and just like how this could potentially then mess up USMCA negotiations. And so that is a 2.5 billion integrated manufacturing supply chain that has become a huge economic engine for the region. So that is, a threat to our competitiveness, to our supply chains, to our ability to invest in the county, and just everything else. Because if something else, like and building on what I mentioned before, is this TJRV is part of every single conversation, including the fact that we're talking about something that as productive as trade, something that we're doing right. Now it's a threat to that. So unless we fix it, it potentially impacts our success stories in the cross-border collaboration or anything else. And that is what businesses should really care, and we're trying to leverage that USMCA negotiations to have language there. We did it before, at least for the implementation bill and getting some funding there, but it has to be embedded in it so that there's more accountability, more transparency, and fines and some sort of measure against the companies that are then not behaving properly.
Thank you, Kenya. I jumped questions there, so let me go back and say, what gives you the greatest sense of urgency? Not just one really thing that you're most concerned with.
I'm concerned of everything that Serge said, but something that it's positive yet still gives me urgency is that we're seeing this momentum, and I don't want to lose it. Like again, everyone's agreed on it. There's 2 presidents talking about it. We didn't have that before, so kudos to the Trump administration too, because Zeldin has been here twice at least. We didn't have that before. We've heard the president talk about this. Sheinbaum was just here. visiting Tijuana, outlining the projects and where they were, and like looking at the list of the infrastructure projects and where they were and the funding that was needed. So like, let's continue to leverage that momentum before it's gone. So that is my sense of.
Thank you. And to add a little bit of Groundhog Day to that, I've been around a while, and every 10 years there's a crisis. There's a response to the crisis. It takes approximately 10 years or so to fix the crisis. And of this current crisis, 2017 was the major break in the Insurgentes collector. It's 2017. And it's 2026 now, and this essentially has not been fixed yet. There's been money allocated. It can fix most of it, but it hasn't happened all the way yet. 10 years later, and that decade there's a recurrence of studies. What are we going to do? We got to look at the hydrology of the region. They forget that there was a study done 10 years ago that's probably still pretty valid. And you repeat the cycle over and over again because the history gets lost. And Hernando, what's the single thing that gives you the most sense of urgency?
I think that the community participates like this, as I said, because as you said, 15 years that the Punta Bandera is not function and nobody knows. We have some group that could have the information, the indicators, the performance KPIs of that plan. We can have that and have some power to raise against the government. And that's, I think, everybody talks, everybody says, everybody criticizes, but not everybody is working in a way that we can propose something. Like I said, participate in the groups and oversee what is happening. Transparency and accountability. Because I've been here in this subject for 20 years or more, 20 years, and governments come and governments go. The president goes very good American and Mexican, and they have some solutions, but the problem is still there. The next 10 years with no president of Mexico anymore, the same as we have today, and not the United States president, we are going to have other presidents, and we don't know what's going to happen. They don't have any long. By example, the CES. I worked at CES. I was the director of CES 6 years, from 2007 to 2015. And
Which, by the way, was a great period. Fernando actually did his job.
no,
Yeah.
6 years. But the point that I have to make is that since then, 12 years, 15 years, there's passing 15 directors. Right now, there is one director that was appointed 3 months ago. And they say that he is running for the mayoral campaign. They are not working for the sense. They are saying that everybody say that. There's not a commitment, of course. They're going to solve only the part of the surface, not the profound part like this. Because the sanitation system is one that when you put budget of that, it's not politically good, have a good income, good revenue. It's not because the people don't see that they work. It's underground, it's far, and they don't want to invest in that. They don't have and I think it's because they are not a long-term planning system, as Kenya said. That's one problem. And I think I'm optimistic on all this because I was last week, I was in the channel of the Tijuana River. And for the first time, I don't know, I was happy because for the first time, I went there every 6 months, 2 months, to see or somewhere. There was no water flowing through the United States. mentioned Sila could have all the capacity to have all the water removed and pump it to Punta Bandera. And I think it's a good side of that. What, how long is going to be that? Okay, I don't know.
Well, it's flowing now.
Okay, I don't know, but I saw by my own eyes that I stand here and what the drainage part of the BBC that goes to the pumping station and from that point to the north to the United States border was not flowing.
There's another political perspective on the local side that we rarely, Fernando, tell me if I'm wrong about this. In the city of San Diego, if the economic development department says we need to do some development on each side of the city, it's part of its own commercial, part of its own residential, the economic development tells what it needs. And they go to, and the sewer department and the water department go to say, what do we need to do infrastructure wise to support that growth in the east part of the city? And I want you to imagine, because it's different in Tijuana. We say, oh, why doesn't Tijuana fix it? Well, the city of Tijuana has the economic development department. The wastewater department is in the state department, not state department, in the state of Baja California Norte. So imagine if the city of San Diego did its economic development with a Democratic mayor and went to the state of California and asked them to fix the sewer system with a Republican governor, how fast that might happen. And it's not always like that. Sometimes it aligns, sometimes it doesn't, but that's part of the, I see Hernando nodding his head, that's part of the local perspective we don't see. It's not the same as here. Sarah, what's the most urgent crisis?
All right, I got them down to 4. But quickly, I heard a talk this week, maybe some of you did, SDSU faculty were presenting some of their research on the aerosolization and the air pollution. And hearing the advice to the question, what should my child do who has breathing problems? And the answer was just don't go outside. Right. How can that be an answer, right? Second was just this visual with the Boz Institute, them explaining to us that the ventricles of the fish hearts are not forming. Just that visual. He also, that group also works with the military dolphins, not the Navy SEALs, the dolphins actually that swim, and found all these chemicals inside the dolphins. And they told us that, we know what each of these chemicals can do to our bodies, but we don't know what the compounds can do when they all get together. And they can be forever chemicals. So we don't know. And so when we talk about accountability, if you get liver disease, pancreatic cancer, lung condition, or, Parkinson's from this, who that was responsible is going to show up to your surgery, right? Pay for it, care for it. Like, there is no accountability. It's so difficult in science to say this chemical caused this. So then we get these health conditions. And it's like, you're sick and you have to deal with it in the medical system. So that's urgent. And then that, Serge articulated, like, my deep personal fear is like the 12 miles closed. Like, the La Jolla Cove is like one of my happiest places on this planet. That's just such a magical place. And the thought that pollution could come up, and why couldn't it, right? So it can easily move. And it happened to Imperial Beach and it could happen to La Jolla. So those are the four.
Are you saying that Tijuana pollution could come to La Jolla?
I'm saying that's a pollution that's in Imperial Beach. I mean, we're all connected, right? I mean, it kind of started out by saying nature knows no boundaries, right? So it's our pollution too. It's our farms and our pesticides. But yeah, sort of the urgency of, it's not determined as destiny, but like it could happen. And it happened, and Serge grew up there. It wasn't like that when he grew up. And now look at what Imperial Beach is. So
I want to go back to the leadership question here, and how do we get to a future? There's a couple of stories to tell that. One is in the Danube River in Europe, they've developed an organization with, where did I lose it here? It's called the, wrong page. It's called the Danube River Convention, and it's managed by the International Commission for the Protection of the Danube River. It's got 14 basin countries in the European Union all working together on the Danube River. So, and the second thing I want to say is that the city of San Diego in the 1980s had pollution problems that were probably worse than what's happening in Tijuana right now. It was terrible. Pump stations failing, major pump lines failing, lagoons covered, broken pipelines, broken outfall. It was terrible. And I worked there, so I know. What did the city do? They marshaled the resources. They put together a leader. His name was Dave Schlesinger. he put together the staff and the consultants to go after it. And they fixed that system. They put it back together, not only for today, but for tomorrow. So my question is, where do we and how do we put together the leadership organization and the leaders that can put together a strategic plan that's not only for today, but tomorrow, and that we can all get behind and know and understand and support on both sides of the border? Let me start with Kenya with that, because
Maybe you'll have different takes on this. In a way, I talked about having a binational kind of like oversight committee, and so if the binational working group exists, but it's only agency to agency, government to government, and then there's no one here, like from the community, again, academic institutions, business, just nonprofits and just residents, as part of those binational committees, then we don't know what we don't know. We don't know what the discussions are, what are the discussions prioritizing, what are the discussions not talking about. There's lack of accountability because there's no one there to put pressure on them. If at the end of the day, it's just them rating themselves on how good they are at getting from one point to another. So I feel like it's, from my point of view, it's more on that, like inserting ourselves into the existing platforms versus building a new one. Because I think thinking about the big picture, I see binational groups being created like 2 or 3 times per year on many issues, not just the Tijuana River Valley. And so as more and more meetings and more groups are created, is the same group of like 40 people on the both sides that are spread thin attending all of these and pushing for all this like combined regional priorities. So my fear is that we start creating more, and then it's the same people kind of like talking to ourselves, preaching to the choir, when our audience that is missing is like our platform to have conversations with the government. So I think my point is how to insert ourselves into the conversations that are already happening versus creating another like working group, which may not be the same suggestion from everyone, but that's my take on it.
Hernando, what's your thoughts on that?
I think there are a lot of working groups, of binational working groups. I think we are the same. We are the border groupies, we say something like that, because we are the same as Kenyan says. But I'm happy to see that here is not the same people that in this group are participating. I think San Diego, there are a lot of, they have no participation between San Diego and Tijuana. Everybody says that, but there's no participation. I think so. That's my point of view. We have to have some participation and some common goal that we can achieve. There's no participation. This is one problem that affects us all, and we have to participate. Not the same people. Everybody, like everybody that is here in this room. Because I know everybody, as Kenya said, the 40 people, we're the same, and we're in this group. It's not more than 40. Every meeting, we are the same. But this group is not the same. And I think we have to participate, right? Because you really understand that there is a big problem. And that problem has to unify San Diego and Tijuana to solve that. I think the San Diego Tijuana community is not united in a day-to-day basis. That's my perspective. Because a few people participate in that relation. You have to participate everybody. Government, community, academic, everybody. And that's my point.
Yeah, times have certainly changed. I recall when we created the San Diego, the Tijuana River Valley Recovery Team, that CESP came to our meetings every other week or every month. And they took us on tours of their plants, proudly showed the work they were doing, how they were trying to fix things. But that was, like I said, a long time ago. And the world has changed in many ways since then, both here and there. Sarah, fresh perspective on this.
one thing that we learned when we went to the Tijuana estuary that I didn't remember or know, that it was under Nixon and Reagan that we got our Clean Air and Clean Water Act. And just the real potential of this to be really bipartisan. So in terms of San Diego working together, I would say that one thing I love about this issue is that nobody's really for poisoning people. So there is this potential there for San Diego to really come together around, and people have been bringing that together. And then just adding the business community, really talking about how to leverage those who are doing things well to put pressure on those who are not. And as customers, as we start to figure out which companies these are, saying, hey, could you stop dumping? Start to put that public pressure as well.
Yeah, thank you. Serge.
Well, when I was mayor, what I realized is, cities essentially are designed, the mission of the city, to treat your sewage, they provide water, if somebody does, pick up the trash, right, hopefully pave the streets. That's not happening really well in San Diego right now, but in IB, basically the biggest problem was the sewer system. And, we had a director of public works who knew what he was doing, and a sewer maintenance team that knew what they're doing. It's backbreaking, never ending. It's like trying to basically make sure a ship doesn't sink, and it's expensive. The fact is, and Hernando knew what he was doing when he ran CES, but the person running CES now is a friend of mine, but she's not an engineer. And I think the issue for all of us, even though we've seen some progress in MOUs and movement forward, is that there's no chief engineer running the system, making sure this work happens. Now, to make sure this has not been a priority for Mexico. Mexico decided, the people that run Tijuana and Baja California decided the most important priority in the city was building a double-decker freeway from Blythe to Tijuana to the airport. They're doing it now. They built part of it. I drove on it Thursday. They bored a hole through a hillside right next to the border fence. It's amazing. 4 lanes. That was a priority. A desal plant in Rosarito Beach, where basically I'm assuming someone will sell water to private developers, develop more residential housing on the way to Rosarito Beach. That is a priority. Those are no budget projects, right? Probably $1 billion for this highway. Who knows what the desal plant's going to cost? We've made sure the U.S. government won't be financing it. I hope that's still the case. When the president of Mexico, the past president of Mexico, wanted to build a train through the Mayan rainforest, the most virgin part of Mexico, pristine, they did it. It's clear the Mexican government has not made this a priority. The other issue that happened, and because there's no one that's running the system on both sides of the border that can just make decisions to make this happen. Just like in Baltimore when there's a bridge collapse that happened, right? And then just like in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania, there was a freeway collapse. The governors made sure those things got fixed quickly. We won a lawsuit against the United States government, the city of Chula Vista, the city of UIB, city of San Diego, Surfrider Foundation, and the state of California all sued the U.S. government. We resolved the lawsuit and got $300 million to the EPA, and it still hasn't been spent. That's another thing we have to acknowledge as Americans, that our regulatory system is great at stopping things, not good at doing things. I was the guy that went to the White House and said, waive NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, to get this done. They didn't do that. Just Fish and Wildlife Service consultation alone cost us years, right? Which meant that billions of gallons of sewage flowed into endangered species habitat, right? Because of some regulatory process. So really bad at getting things done, but it's clear that in Mexico, they have not assigned the best people to work on this. They have not made it a priority. And the other thing is because it's a one-party state, it's not a functioning democracy. It's a one-party state. Everyone's in line. You have to be loyal to the system. So at one point, people say that we've fixed the problem that happened again. And then you say, excuse me, it's not fixed. You get in trouble, right? You get canceled. You get in trouble. And that is a very real issue, right? People get very mad that you're saying that the water's polluted. So, those are all realistic issues, but we need to have more centralization of fixing the problem or it's not going to get fixed.
Thank you, sir. Let's not talk about funding for a second. In the United States, in the city of San Diego, we don't like it, but if we need to improve our sewer system or water system, we have a rate case. And the city council says, okay, we're going to raise your rates X amount. And we might complain about it and it might get modified, but essentially the rates get raised, the funding is put in place to fix the system. So we can't have a rate case on the international plant because that's not a city of San Diego plant. It's got to take some budget from somewhere in the State Department to fix that plant or to expand that plant. There has to be some money for that. And in the city of in Tijuana, and maybe Hernando can talk about this. I don't know how the rate system works in there, but I think it's not the same as in the U.S. or the economy won't support the kind of rate case that is needed. Can you address that, Hernando?
Okay, the investment always is a problem in everything in every government. We don't have the monies to invest what all the city needs. But I think that Serge made a point that we have to look more in Mexico in a planning system that prioritize the works 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all the people, all of us that the government governments come and government goes, and we the people stay here in the city. We can have an accountability that you have to build number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, because that's the priority, not number 20.
But so you're saying that a rate case for the citizens and businesses in Tijuana wouldn't work to fund all of this.
Yeah, that it can work. It can work, but I think we have to propose a very good plan. By example, there are some PPP projects that I think it can work in some places.
Public-private partnership projects.
And but right now, this government in Mexico is afraid of everything that is private investment. It's a kryptonite. And I think that's a big obstacle in that we have to be invested in public, only the fiscal money that comes to the government, not other kind of money. And the things are very stretched, not very wide, and only and the scarcity of resources began in scarcity in other things. There are a lot of people that don't have the sanitation system in their colonias. It's racing right now. Yeah. You go toward the back east, the eastern part of Tijuana, it's all irregular settlers. Yes, and they don't have any services. And that's a big problem.
Anybody else want to pitch in on that, guys?
Yeah, it's touched on it already, but part of what we were talking about is precisely looking at the water rates. Actually, I think you can probably give your example too. But like my water bill is like 250 pesos. Which is low, understanding also like Mexican salaries, right? But how are we supposed to like get enough money for the operation and maintenance at that rate? And then taking accountability, like we have not even talked about the communities that are not connected and whose responsibility is that? Is that the city because they're in Tijuana, or is that the state because that's just from the state? And so that conversation kind of gets lost and that's not really properly addressed. And then once that's determined, obviously no one wants it because that's the responsibility of funding. And no matter how much we invest in the infrastructure and maintaining it, these communities are still there, and they're going to be dumping more and more water as the community grows. Part of the study, I think, which by the way is the chamber did not come up with it. It was former IBWC commissioner, Mariana Genetti and Doug Glyden from the EPA. So they're the ones putting this together and thinking about, how much the population will continue to grow. And so how much can we continue to invest? Whereas like all this community will continue to also grow and settle in different areas of Tijuana. And until anyone claims that responsibility, they're not addressing that at all. So that is where like maybe that conversation aligned with, are we asking maybe CEF to conduct some sort of study in terms of are they charging enough, or are they charging companies enough? Are they charging, developers that are building these buildings, with condos to invest in the infrastructure underneath it, because there used to be 5 toilets there in that like area, and now there's 20 condos. So the impact on the infrastructure below is a lot, and we have not even talked about that yet.
Thank you. I want to jump now and make sure we start to end on a positive note on this. And Serge, I'm going to give you the challenge of telling us what you think. Let's throw aside all the negative. Let's say we've talked about funding, we've talked about governance, we've talked about some of the real environmental and social issues. But what would a successful binational collaboration, forward-looking, what would it look like?
0 days to beach closure. That's the only metric we're using. I mean, the community is not listening to anything anymore until they see open beaches. So that's it.
Okay. That sounds like a no solution to me. Other than hope for the best.
I think that's what, our mission is to conserve coastal and coastal and marine ecosystems, and ultimately the community just wants clean beaches. So all of this stuff is great, but it has to have an impact. It's like, it's really great if people play games, the Padres play, but if they don't win, no one cares.
And I want to
the Dodgers are winning. So, and it's, the former politician, the recovering politician, it's amazing in politics, everyone cheers, you had a meeting, but ultimately it doesn't matter unless you fix the problem. We need to be a little bit more hard-nosed with politicians and make sure they do their jobs.
And I want to move back to your sports because you're right. We said we have a team and the team's not winning. And Endo talked about we have a team too, but it's a defensive team. It's goaltending. So I want to put this in a positive frame. What does the team look like? Not beach closures is a measure, but what does the team look like? What's the system look like where we have binational cooperation?
Yes, I said that we have to keep the things simple. As I said, there are only 4 ways that the water can flow from Tijuana, 4 pathways. As you know, pumping station 1 and channel, the canal. The transboundary water flows from there, not from Tecate, not from Montai, not from there. We have to focus on that one. As I said, PVC is, I was surprised that there's no flowing. If that keeps 2 or 3 weeks, the beach can be open. We have to locate it. What is happening that is not flowing water to United States? Let's keep it there.
So you're really in alignment with Serge. Serge is saying this is the measure we want. You're saying here's the goal. Here's the goalkeeping we have to do to make that measure happen now, before we get to a bigger picture.
We are going to solve transboundary water, not the problem of Tijuana. Big problem of sewage systems, of pipes, broken pipes, of operation and maintenance. But the transboundary water, that is the problem between the 2 countries. And I think we have to focus on that. The transboundary water, that there is only 4 pathways to. The other thing is, the other part is the Punta Bandera. And as Serge said, the flows from the Ocean Pacific flows from north to south. And my theory says that no, the more is north to south. The 9 months a year flows north to south, and only the winter flows.
South swell happens in the summer, brings it to the north. Yeah, but yeah.
Okay, I have because the water that's the reason that the beaches are very cold, because they're coming from Alaska. Okay, but I don't know. I'm not ocean.
Got to talk to those old surfers to figure out where the slopes go.
Okay, but okay, the Punta Bandera and some other place that we have to be focused on, and that's it. For the Americans and Mexicans, we have to do that, not Tecate, La Presa, other parts, only that. And the IBWC has a good way. They are diplomats. They talk and talk. That's okay. That's their function, and we have to support that. And that's if we can, as I said, if I standpoint in the Tijuana River channel and it's not flowing from the PVC that to the United States, at least there is 50 meters, the border is there. It's not flowing to the United States. It's not flowing sewage. The beach has to be open in several weeks.
Yeah.
That's
All right.
that's we have to keep it that. Okay, one day at a time. Okay, that's my mind.
Sarah, high level academic view.
I was really
What's-
thinking
what's-
about the French soccer team. And how they do. It just sort of like all of a sudden Mbappe runs it down and then creates something and there's confusion, it goes in. And that's sort of the aggression that maybe Serge was talking about. You sort of have to go for it. They're very good forwards. So keep an eye on them versus Spain. But I was thinking about like because I'm on thinking about the corporate side, but like the life cycle of a tire, right? The company makes the tire, you pay a recycle fee, and then life cycle of it, it's like, oh, then we're left to deal with it. Like the tire industry doesn't take responsibility for that. We get stuck with that, and then it gets stuck with Chris Peregrine in the estuary trying to pull it out of the sand and spending all that money. But I'm really thinking about there is so much money right now in this world flying around. So yeah, well, Kenya's like water bill is only $17 a month. Like maquiladoras are making tons of money. Tire industry is huge. Like there's plenty. So I think getting out of like that there's not enough money. It's not heading towards this, but there's plenty for a freeway and there's plenty for a train. So I think that's just important to not get in that poverty framework.
I follow that lately, and there's another little piece to that. Sergio and Kenya, you probably know this better, but there is a tire fund that for every tire that's sold in California goes into a fund, and that fund is intended to address this very problem she's talking about. The problem is the state of California can't spend money in Mexico. So you've got the dollars there that can't cross the border to solve the problem. The other part of it's a regulatory problem in Tijuana. Where are those tires coming from? Why are they running around free? A lot of them are used on there. What's the right word, Kenya, when you build a house on land that's not really yours? Yeah, so people do that. What do they make their foundations of? They make their foundations out of tires. And so there's some regulatory issues there and enforcement issues that don't happen. So when you get a storm, the storm washes out the foundation goes across the border, and there's the tires. So you've got that. That's why it happens. Okay, let's Kenya. Who did I forget? Yeah.
Okay. To me, success looks like shared accountability that translates into less beach closures and the chart was pretty clear. If we were already complaining in 2017 for transboundary flows, can we at least go back to that? When it's no rain, there shouldn't be any flows. So that's another kind of milestone. But ultimately, is like Serge said, like we want our beaches to be open.
Yeah, and it's interesting because in the 2008, 2012, when I was chairing the Tijuana Valley Recovery Team, we weren't focused on sewage. We were focused on sediment and trash and tires in particular, because it had appeared that the sewage problem was largely addressed. There were two water reclamation plants, the La Morita and Herrera, that produced between them 60 million gallons a day of reclaimed water. I don't think they produce it now because there was no place to send it, but those plants were built, and there was like 90% of the city was at least the data we heard was already plumbed for sewage. So we thought we were largely on the upswing and going in the right direction, but something changed. I don't know what it was that changed, but anyway. Great job, panel. Thank you so much. Wish we had even more time. Maybe we'll have a little bit, but what a great group. And now we have questions. Does anybody have their hand up? My first hand up I saw was way back in the corner. Yes. We're going to make our runners run all the way back.
Thank you, Carl. Steve Clary here again.
No, the first person.
Change hats here, Carl. Thank you all for your passion and your commitment to this. But I want to go make a comment here. In my former life, I was a career naval officer, and I want to comment that no one has mentioned the impact that the Tijuana River pollution has had on military training and military operations. This is the headquarters for Navy Special Warfare Training here in the United States. That has impacted their ability to train in the open ocean. There have been over 1,000 cases of sickness and illness among the trainees. It's had a major impact on training when the bacteria counts get high on the ocean. They have to train in the bay. And the second part, Mayor Surge, much as I respect your former political career, this is not just about Imperial Beach. There are 25,000 people in Coronado, 2 million visitors a year, all of whom were affected by this. So your passion is appropriate, but the problem needs to be solved more than just opening beaches. Thank you.
Thank you.
So
all
you say,
for
you would say your name and your question.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Idara Ogunsanju. I can appreciate Dr. Fetterman, your point about needing humor sometimes, how you can open ears in a different way. Nothing is a laughing matter, but over time you learn what's effective because accountability is not automatic and we can't always wait for empathy to take hold. The damage done, the loss is often too much by the time everyone can relate or empathize to the situation. What have you found to be effective? Not just Dr. Fetterman, just everyone in general. You know, Kenya mentioned political cycles change. What have you found to be effective for awareness, which has the potential to not only create awareness, education, and maybe create that pressure that's needed and a discomfort for all accountable, and also what is effective for upstream? To the extent that we're not back in 2017, what works to start to minimize the damage? Awareness and what
Just
works.
briefly on awareness, one thing that we did in class is we thought about what are all the different reasons people care about this, right? So if it's Navy, if it's Border Patrol, if it's the birds, if it's babies, if it's elderly, if it's swimmers, it doesn't matter. And so what we wanted everybody to find their way in. So we wanted to have as many way in as possible without trying to tell people what they should care about. Hypothetically. So that was the awareness and all that.
Just briefly, I have a marketing background, so I'm not actually in policy. So what I think about it is now I'm selling policy. So I sell it to different audiences, and that is the community, that is nonprofit side, academia, elected officials, local, state, federal, cross-border, and businesses. So to your point, and we've talked about not just environmental, we talked about public health, we talked about national security a little bit too with naval SEALs and just border patrol and CBP in general. And we talked about business. So it's already 4 layers. So it depends really on who I'm talking to. I'm not gonna use the same talking points when I go talk to an elected official that I do when I go to Tijuana, for example, to the point of upstream. So I've been having conversations recently with the industry association in Tijuana to talk about why they should care. So keep in mind the spill is on this side, not on that side. So my talking points have to change on why they should care. They should care because this is now being elevated and potentially impacting USMCA. They should care about that. They should care because everything that goes cross-border, even as we develop our cross-border workforce, all of the conversations will bring up Tijuana River Valley, and they're not even aware of what's going on. And they should care because the U.S. is their customer at the end of the day. So everything they're selling, when they're producing maquilas and everything, they're exporting most of it to the US and to California. So if they want to maintain that relationship, then they should care about the Tijuana River Valley. And then the other thing is the lack of awareness that the public has in Mexico. So there's no signs and beach closures in Tijuana and Rosarito. They don't know. I tell my family that you will not go into the water, but they don't know. So there's that too. There's no acknowledgement of this being an issue. There's no public rage thinking about the public health impacts of the river. Of the contamination on their side. So there's 2 opportunities there in which we can push Tijuana and Baja to care a little bit more, not just on the government side, but making sure that the community and the private sector care so that they push the elected officials. So again, to your question, it depends on who you're talking to.
So yeah, one of the most, we've been involved in probably the biggest media pieces that have gone on about this. So I think it was right around the pandemic. We put it on 60 Minutes with a focus on the Border Patrol and the Navy SEAL training base. That was really effective. We did the New York Times last year with a sort of focus on the community impacts and the stuff of loss, right? Which I think is really important. And then we just helped put in the Wall Street Journal with focus on Coronado. I think it's interesting reporters tend to ignore Coronado because they don't want to talk about Coronado. And every time my last year as mayor, people would reporters would call me up and I just said, go talk to the mayor of Coronado, Richard Bailey, a friend of mine, to say, go talk to them because they're getting impacted too. It was too much focus on Imperial Beach. And then I just heard on the NBC News where the focus on Mexico. And then more recently, we just did a press conference on Thursday. The idea was to really bring U.S. environmentalists to Tijuana to talk about the impact in the United States. And again, why this issue is a threat to the trade agreement. So the folks in Mexico understand why people are angry in the United States. So it's more like, hey, you guys should know this is a threat to Mexico. So, and then we've done consistent media in Mexico, national level media, highlighting this issue. So there is awareness in Mexico, but it's challenging. So, but I think the issue of the naked seals and border patrol is really important. I think that gets the attention of a lot of folks. And it's clear, like when KUSI covers this, Mike Levin told me his constituents call his office. There's a reason why Mike Levin's involved because that focus on national security does have a big impact on getting this addressed in Congress and the White House.
Thank you. Just one of you, what's the regular media reporting in the Tijuana press about this? When we see huge spillage, do you want to answer that? Is there regular coverage of that? Do they know? Do they understand? Do they know that there's anger? Do they know all that?
No, there's not as much as in California because in Tijuana, the pollution of the study, we are not seeing the water flows to the river. Nobody took a bite in the river. We are not so in touch with that. Sometimes there are some part of pollution or odors that flows from the channel. That is when there is a problem. But there is there's no people there. There's nothing, and they are not. We are not in Tijuana. This issue is not an issue. The other issues are the security, mobility, the waiting times.
I want to cut you off because I want to get more audience questions, but thank you. Then answer the question. A lot of his questions right here. Let's try to keep the question short. Concise.
Mayor Benita grew up on the beaches of Ivy, Silver Strand, Coronado. We all learned to surf there as well. For the last 40 years, I've been with the U.S. State Department. All my colleagues at the U.S. State Department that have been involved in either the commission or at the Consulate General in Tijuana have had one consistent issue. And I said, why haven't you solved this? I said, because officially the government of, whether it's the state of Baja California or the government of Mexico says, not our problem. Goes to you, it's your problem. You want to solve it, you give us money to solve it. So the single largest challenge in the diplomatic effort has been, how do you force the government of Mexico to solve a problem that they see as not theirs? You've all alluded to the fact that it is not their problem, but how do you do it? And I love the discussion of looking at the trade agreement. You've got to find a mechanism. You've got to work with Washington to find a mechanism to force Mexico to solve a problem that they do not see as their problem. So I'm just curious, any other ideas from the panelists? And thank you for all that you're doing.
Anybody? USMCA? Go ahead.
No, I think you're right. And, I think that's what our message to, our folks who have engaged with the Trump administration is to say, we understand the Trump administration has really been pushing us to go harder. That's very clear. They need to push, please tell them to push even harder. That's the issue. They have to really make sure this is a priority. So I think you're right. And, the reality is when, I was in office, I really did appreciate them going to the State Department. It's really great to have consular officials and ambassadors involved, but there's a lot of bilateral issues with security, all kinds of stuff. So, but the pressure definitely has been ratcheted up. I think that's good, but it definitely needs to be more done.
Let's go to this side of the room. Go way back there in the corner.
Thank you so much. Coming from a third world country now called second world country, we have to understand that we don't have the efficient monetary fiscal policies. Externalities are not seen. The tax system doesn't work as efficiently as in the United States. You are all really born in the best country in the world. In our countries, Mexico, Colombia, Ecuador, we have poverty, unemployment, we have different issues. So really, there is no money there is no money. So part of the problem is really is not a priority in Tijuana because your city has other issues. So I was wondering if there is an international country where there has been a similar situation, and what can we learn from them? And also for those with the World Cup, congratulations to Africa. Most of the teams in Europe are African from Africa. Most of the players are from Africa, in my opinion.
Is there a model that you've seen? I don't see anyway.
I
Okay.
think Israel and the neighbor countries have some kind of things like this. But I don't know. Okay, I don't know. Something. It's very unusual, but I think there are a lot of transboundary rivers, but I really don't know exactly what is happening. And the problem is that the problem of the Tijuana River is that it's not a river that flows every day of the year. Only flows when it's raining, and and the pollution it's very exaggerated because this is the water that is coming, it's polluted water, and in some parts the rivers are so big that the problem is diluted. That's one point of view. I don't know if that's
Sarah, maybe that's a good
I
study
know.
for your students.
I know.
I want to ask some more questions from the audience right here. Questions, please. We're not editorializing.
Hi, the question was whether there were any other countries,
Mhm.
and there's exactly the same issue on there's different parameters, and that is the United States and Canada in the province of British Columbia and the state of Washington. Because Victoria, which is the capital of British Columbia, dumps tons of untreated sewage into well, it's not the oceans, but this has been on for decades. So have you ever been in touch with, no, but the United States, have you ever been in touch with people up there to see how they handling a different country?
Sounds like another research project for USD.
I know, my husband's from Victoria, so now.
Thank you for that comment. Who else do we have here? Let's go right over here.
Hi, my name is Jane Siegel. I'd like to know what is the involvement of the San Diego County Department of Public Health in these efforts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more recently with the election of Coleman Gary, the county supervisor board, and then even before that, thanks to really researchers at San Diego State and then Tim Prather at UCSD, there's just been a lot more focus on public health. So I think there's been some measures with these air purifiers, for example, they're giving out. I think a lot more can be done. There's going to be a bond initiative, or an initiative on the border, on the ballot in the fall, to basically support. Get more funding for that, so they have more resources available. So I think that's part of it. They're probably doing a little bit more, but I think Supervisor Gary is really doing a good job of getting them more engaged in this. The county definitely was a missing element has been a missing element for a long time on this issue. I think under the leadership of Supervisor Gary and the entire last member, I definitely think they're trying to get more county engagement and more resources on the table, which is well.
Thank you, Serge. Right there. Good. What? Oh, okay. I've been overridden again. Go ahead.
Has anyone considered that this is actually a bottoms-up problem? The original sin, the origination sin, is treating human output as a waste and not as a resource that could be converted to green Tijuana and improve their life. Instead, we take the black water, mix it with another resource, gray water, increase the problem by a magnitude, pump it all around and drop it, and then the problem just magnifies. We do this here because we can afford to treat it as a toxic waste, but it still costs us a lot of money. They can't afford it.
So we should just take that valuable resource so you don't have to import fertilizers and all that stuff. And we should start at grassroots. Learn to compost food in schools, put the human compost onto the trees, the ornamental trees, build them shade.
That's correct. I think in Tijuana, as Serge and Carl said, as when I was director, we inaugurated the Burita and Vera plants, very state-of-the-art plants, and the purpose was to reuse the water for gardens or for agricultural, industrial use, or commercial. I have a project that I call the Purple Project, Proyecto Morado, that I have developed. But we began bringing purple pipes to the city. But the problem is that when I left, when the state government left, the next government says that's not the priority, and they do not follow that project. And right now, it's very sad to say that we are using only 5% of the water. That's a crime. I think we have to have more usage of the using water. There are projects, but I don't know if they are going to be developed or built. There are good projects to put the water to the Rodriguez Dam, that kind of projects, but I don't know if they are going to be built because it's not done. It's not invested. I don't know. It's not funded. I don't know. And that's the problem. Long-term planning, and yes, the use of water. It's
and it's not unique to Mexico. We built water reclamation plants here and didn't spend the money to put in the purple pipe to distribute it all. So same thing. See over here. Oh wait, so I'm going to hold this. This had his hand up from the very beginning.
My name's Neil Pearl. My question is that you've talked about federal involvement and city and some county involvement, but I never heard the word state of California involvement. I would assume that would be Fish and Wildlife Marine Division. Would be the agency in the government that would take care of problems, especially with the natural resources down by the border. So my question is, are they involved in the process of trying to clean up this mess that we have?
Well, the federal government, I'll answer that one real quickly. It's the federal government's treatment plant down there, and it's the federal government through IBWC and the State Department that work with Mexico. So yes, they are involved, and Fish and Wildlife has been involved in doing assessments, but not regulatory. I've got one more minute left, and I want to ask our panelists to, in one sentence, I want you to tell me, let's see what I want you to tell me. I want you to tell me what gives you hope. One sentence.
I'm very optimistic because I think that this kind of gathering, it's the word they come here to San Diego to say what is happening, and that's the kind of people that we need to hold from the bottom up. We have to have the accountability of the government to make the good the things in a good manner.
Thank you, Sarah. One sentence.
We know what the problem is, and there are solutions.
Great. Kenya?
I think it's exactly that. We know what to do next, and we agree on this being a priority, and we're building momentum.
Growing momentum and a really diverse, dynamic, strong team. We really appreciate it. Having a business community is really amazing. So yeah, but grateful for everyone's leadership.
Thank you. And let's have another round of applause for our panel. I'll bring it all back up and close this out.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. Carl, Serge, Kenya. Anando and Sarah. That really was an incredibly insightful discussion, and I think from our audience engagement, we saw just how meaningful that really was. And thank you as well to UC San Diego Extended Studies and the Ocean Lifelong Learning Institute for hosting today's program in this brilliant venue. And thank you as well to our volunteers, our interns, our board members, and to everyone else who makes these events possible, including everyone here today. I think today's discussion reminds us that some of the world's most pressing international challenges really do begin here in our own backyard. And the Tijuana River crisis isn't just an environmental issue, it's a public health issue, an economic issue with diplomatic challenges that really do call for collaboration across borders, sectors, governments, and communities. So thank you for being a part of what has been a really important conversation and for supporting really informed civic dialogue through the San Diego World Affairs Council. Just a few updates for your calendars, a few upcoming events. On the 8th of August, we have one of our Engage San Diego series in collaboration with 1SD, and that will feature another timely community dialogue. On September 6th at Balboa Park, we have our Passport to Diplomacy event presented in partnership with the San Diego Diplomacy Council and the International Cottages in Balboa Park, celebrating San Diego's rich multicultural heritage and international connections. And then on September 12th, at Georgetown University, Professor Giorgio Caferio will be in town. She presents the UAE and the New Middle East Diplomacy, Power, and Regional Transformation conversation. So if today's program resonated with you, then we invite you to become a member of the San Diego World Affairs Council, to bring a friend to a future event, or to help us spread the word about our mission. Your support really does enable us to continue bringing thoughtful conversations on global issues for our community. So thank you again for joining us this morning, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event. Have a wonderful day.